don't need that either. So I don't have a PowerPoint, so you can just all look completely at me for 8 minutes. So people have talked a lot about things that have changed and things that need to change. And I want to talk a little bit about what I want to stay the same. So I'm going to start with a factor that's internal and intrinsic to our industry and essentially is the future. And that factor is us, because we're stunningly privileged to work in a sector where our primary capital is human capital. It's just people, and it's just us lot, really. We don't have factories, and we don't have a supply chain, and we don't have all these outside factors that can massively impact what we do and that we have to mitigate. Our raw materials and our product is really simply our people and their ideas. And we sell ourselves to our clients, and we sell our ideas to our clients, and we sell the concept that in the future, if they keep us on board, we'll keep having good ideas and we're their partner. And I think that's a ridiculously empowering truth. Because if we are the work, then we are the future. So it is entirely what we make of it. But there's a bit of a problem with that. And when I say that, I mean there's a bit of a problem with us. Because sometimes it seems to me, and not all the time, and actually really lovely and refreshingly, not so much tonight listening to all my peers talk, but sometimes it does feel a little bit like we can be incredibly prone to spending a lot of time worrying about the shiny and the new and the external and the changing. And it just feels like we do love to spend a really inordinate amount of time pontificating about new, shiny, zeitgeisty thingamajigs, whether it's big data, and I'm sorry, I don't like big data, I cannot lie. I don't have a maths degree, it just upsets me. Or content, or maybe shared ownership, or platforms, or the channel mix, as you talked about. And it feels like it's always what's new or different or changing. And sometimes that's fine. But the thing that I always worry about is if that's always what we're talking about and always what we're focusing on and always what we're having events around, then we maybe forget to interrogate or maintain or put at the forefront in the centre some of the really interesting things that are fundamentally unchanging. And so what are these unchanging things that I speak of? Well, yet again, my answer is people, humans. We could call them consumers or our audiences, but I just think it's nicer to say just, folk out there pottering about. Because the thing that we do that I love and am so massively interested in, and that I do think is fundamentally important, and is the thing that all the exciting examples that previous speakers have used and the call to have fucking big ideas need, is the people-focused bit, the figuring out what makes people tick bit. And that's often a very unchanging thing. And there's a lovely Bill Burnley quote, which you will all know, but it says that it took millions of years for man's instincts to develop, and it will take millions more for them to even vary. And it is fashionable to talk about changing man, but a communicator must be concerned with unchanging man, with his obsessive drive to survive, to be admired, to succeed, to love, and to take care of his own. And he was right, and I agree with him. I mean, factually, our bodies and our brains genuinely have not evolved since about 10,000 years ago, when we're just, pottering around the African plains, and they're not about to change now. And whilst the context may have changed, our fundamental drives, our motivations, and our instincts have not. And I have an example of something that's changed. So let's say communication technology, the ability to talk or comment or interact with anyone in our context or in our social network, no matter what time of day, how far away they are, or what they're doing. And that's a fairly massive technological revolution of the last, say, 15, 20-ish years that has changed and evolved and crept up on us, but like that's the basis of it, and you couldn't do that, say, 25 years ago. But there's a really lovely argument and a piece of analysis from one of my favorite anthropologists, Kate Fox, that says actually this communication revolution is really just the modern day equivalent of the garden fence. Because what are our unchanging humans doing with that? Well, they're gossiping. And when I say gossip, I don't mean that in the trivial sense that your brains probably jump to. But from a sociological and anthropological perspective, gossip is the human equivalent of monkeys picking, or apes, it definitely apes, picking flies and fleas off of themselves, off of each other, of social grooming amongst primates. And it stimulates the production of endorphins, it relieves stress, and it boosts your immune system. And about 2/3 of all our human conversation counts as this form of gossip, as vocal grooming, which is essential to our social and our psychological and our physical well-being. And this space-age technology of mobile phones or social networks is something that actually hasn't changed us or moved us forwards or away from where we used to be. It's actually allowed us, in a physically and geographically fragmented world, to return to a more natural and humane communication patterns that we used to have in a pre-industrial society. When we lived in smaller, more stable communities, the smaller communities that the previous speaker was talking about, and which are rooted in our brains and are something that we are driven to pursue. And that's what that facilitates. And yeah, there are probably many other interesting, insightful things going on than just our gossip factor. But it is one of my absolute favorite examples of how even when the context changes, in what can seem like a fairly radical way, actually, what people do is just get on with it, and they just use it for something that they've been doing all along, and they just make what they've been doing all along a little bit better. So the need that it fulfills for people, and the emotion that surrounds it, and the what makes us tick bit, is still that enduring human truth that has always been there, and it's still satisfying those drives. And finding those, you could call them truths or insights or whatever you want to call them, finding those interesting things about what makes people tick is the bit that I just absolutely love about planning. I mean, that might just mean I'm a totally massively nosy person. I just want to know what other people are doing. That's the bit that I love. And so I suppose my point is that, yes, there is change and there is newness, but amidst that and whatever distractions the future happens to throw at us, I really hope that we don't forget those fundamentals that don't change. So the future, really simply, is just what we make of it. And my hope is that rather being distracted by the external and the shiny and the innovative, we stay interested in people, nosy about what interests them, curious about the world they live in, and intrigued by why they do what they do.